Hello, and welcome to the January 2020 Logos and Mythos Book Club Live. Thank you guys for joining me. I'm sorry I'm a little later tonight. I had a couple of little issues, completely forgot to plug things in and yet again, stuff like that. The dog's acting crazy, so that's how things go, right? So I hope you guys are having a great year so far. And so the way this will work is, in case you're joining me for the first time, you've never watched before, I like to ask you guys if you have any requests for recommendations for books. Maybe you're looking for a book to read, but you're not sure what to read. Maybe you know a genre that you like or something that you're kind of looking for, but you don't know what it could be for sure. And so maybe some of us can give you some ideas. So at any point during the live broadcast or later in the comments, because that's the great thing about Facebook, this thing will be here on my Facebook page whenever you guys get a chance to listen and watch. You can just put in the comments and ask what you're looking for, or maybe you have a book that you've really enjoyed and you want to share with others. So be sure to put that in the comments as well, because we're always looking for new books to read, and I know I and all of the other readers would enjoy hearing your recommendations. So that's kind of a couple of things that we'll be doing tonight. But since this is the first of the new year, I wanted to do a couple of extra things tonight. So in addition to just asking for book recommendations or sharing some, I would love to hear what your reading goals are for this year. And I'm going to share mine, which if you follow me on social media or get my newsletter, you may have already heard some of these things, but I'll just kind of toss those out to you guys. And I'd love to hear what your goals are for the year as far as reading goes. Also, if you have any books that you're looking forward to, maybe they're coming out this year, or maybe they're just books that perhaps they're classics, but you have already planned to read them this year and you're excited about it. I'd love to hear about that as well. So, I'll just jump right in and talk about the best books of the decade. I wanted to mention that. That was a blog post that I put up a few weeks ago, and it was just kind of a roundup of the best books of the decade that I have read. And what I did was I took and I looked back beginning in 2010 and went all the way, of course, to this year, 2019, or this past year, 2019. And I chose the 3 books that I most enjoyed from each of those years. And that was not easy. I got this idea from one of the book bloggers that I follow, Allison at Mind Joggle, which is a great website that you can check out, and she had joined in with another book blogging buddy. Her name is Rachel at Never Enough Novels, and they linked up to kind of both put out some of their best books of the decade, and a lot of other people joined in, and I think they may have had a hashtag, but you guys can find my blog post, and what I'll do is I'll put the link definitely in the comments when I'm done. I think I can actually go back and edit the post that this video's in, so it might just be in the post where this video is. But I'm going to get you guys these links somewhere along the way so you can look at this later. But I found what was difficult was some years I had trouble coming up with 3. Maybe it was kind of hard to even have 3 that I thought were really great for that year. And then other years, it was really hard to narrow it down to only 3. So I found that interesting that, it varied from year to year. Some years I didn't really read as much as other years. But another thing that was really neat was to look back and see how the books that I've read over these 10 years have shaped and molded me and prepared me to be an author myself in some cases. I was able to look back and see, oh yeah, these were years that I was just starting out homeschooling my kids, so certain books had to do with that. So those were kind of some interesting things. It's almost like a different type of journal that you can look back when you see the books that you've read at different times in your life. And so that was kind of an interesting thing. I actually did cheat. I'm scrolling through the post right now. I did cheat in 2012, and I have 4 books on there. But when you look at the books, you'll understand. One is the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society. One is the Silmarillion. So that was the first year that I read Tolkien's Silmarillion, and wow. All right, you guys probably know that that is my favorite book, and there's a big reason for that. Snowflower and the Secret Fan, which was another fantastic historical fiction book. I really enjoyed that. I think that was the first book that I read by Lisa C., and I highly recommend her. She is an outstanding writer. And then Treasures of the Snow, and that was a very special book that I first read as a kid and reread as an adult. So I couldn't narrow it down any more than those four for that year. But in 2019, so the three books that I chose from all the books that I read last year, and last year I made a goal of reading 25 books, and I actually read, my challenge says that I read 32 books, but I think somehow accidentally I got one book on there twice. So I think I only read 31 books last year. But of those books, I narrowed it down to All the Crooked Saints by Maggie Stiefvater, who I have become a huge fan of. I love her books. I love her writing. She writes things her way, and I love that. I really, really do. I appreciate that so much. And her writing is just beautiful. So there's that too. I also read a classic, Frankenstein. I had never read that before, and I'm so glad that I read it. It was not at all what I expected, and at one point I thought that I would just stop reading, that it really wasn't all that it was cracked up to be, and I'm very glad that I continued reading. So for those of you, and I think I had a conversation with someone who is wanting to read more classics this year and has not read this one, I do recommend it, and I would say stick with it. There are disturbing parts to it, but it's just so fascinating. It's basically a psychological study in some ways. So it's very interesting. And then the third one that I chose from last year was Light on Glass by Michelle Keener, who has become just one of my favorite authors and also a dear friend. She is pretty incredible. I think I read all three of her books last year. And so Light on Glass was the last one, the most recent one to come out. And I love all of her books. She also has written a devotional called You Are, which is fantastic. It's 30 days of devotions. Highly recommend that one. And Mission Hollywood was another one that I read by her, and I loved all of them. Highly recommend all of those. So those were just a few of my best books of the decade. So there's that. And then coming back into talking about preparing for the new year, and I'm moving things around here so I can flip back over. All right, so goals. All right, I am all about goals. If you guys have followed me for any time, you know that I love goals. They are very important to me. They're how I get things done. They're how I plan out to achieve certain things that I want to achieve in a certain amount of time. So they're super important to me. And I, of course, have goals for my writing, but I also have goals for my reading. So I mentioned to you how I set a goal last year to read 25 books, and I actually surpassed that last year, which is exciting. And this year, I have set my goal on Goodreads for 30 books this year. So we'll see how we do. I plan on, and I know I mentioned this, I think it was last month's, I mentioned how I want to read a lot more fantasy this year because I will start writing my fantasy series later this year. And so that's, I get to read and call it research, right? That's a fun part of being a writer. But I'd love to hear what you guys, what are your reading goals this year? Do you want to maybe read some different kinds of books, some books outside of your comfort zone? Maybe you just would like to read a book a month. I don't know, whatever the case may be, I would love to hear what your goals are. And another thing that I wanted to mention was if you're not already on Goodreads, you guys should get on Goodreads and just join the little challenge. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. You just declare how many books you want to read. And if you don't meet it, that's okay. There's no big deal. But what I found that was so neat when I looked back as I was preparing that blog post on the best books of the decade that I had read was all of these books that I've read for 10 years, actually I've been on Goodreads, I think, since '08 or '09. So I actually had more than a decade worth that were logged on there. So I could see when I read them, I could see what I thought about them, I could read my reviews, and it just was, like I said, it's a form of journaling. So you may have like a reader's journal, which I like to do that as well, and kind of put that, jot down notes as I read. Sometimes I like to copy lines from books that I really, either I like the flow of the way that the author wrote it, or it's just a, you know, I don't know, there's something about the words that really spoke to me. I like to do that, but I don't always do that. So this is something where it's just kind of an overview look at, I can look back and see, okay, I read these books this year, and this is what I thought about them, and I didn't like that book. Oh, that's why. You know, sometimes I forget, you know, why did I not really like this book? And then I can go back and read my review and get a reminder of that. So those are a few things. So, hey, 3 books is still great. So whatever your goal is, it does not matter. You know, I see some people and they put their reading goal for a year is like 100 or 200 or something crazy. I'm like, how in the world can you read all of these? It's just insane. But we all have different amounts of time that we can devote to reading. So if you only get 1 book read, then hey, that's 1 book, and that's pretty amazing. So whatever your goal is. And yeah, I love Goodreads, I really do. I'm very thankful for that website. In fact, it's probably my favorite of any social media. And I know it's not social media like you think of Facebook or something like that, but you can find other friends on Goodreads, and you can see what they're reading. You can share reads. So like if you get done reading a book and you think, oh man, so-and-so would really like this, then you can share it with them directly on Goodreads if your friend's there, which is kind of cool. So that's another thing about Goodreads. So, all right, what books are you guys looking forward to this year? So if you have, and it doesn't have to be a book that's coming out this year, although you may know of some that are coming out later this year that you're really looking forward to getting your hands on. Maybe, you know, I love how the libraries have, you can go and find your favorite author, you know, the really famous ones, the ones who put out a lot of books and are well known. You can go ahead and put your name on the list for the next book by them. And even when they don't have a title for it yet. So I think that that's kind of neat. But it may or may not be a new book. Maybe it's a classic, like I mentioned earlier, that you've always wanted to read and you've decided that 2020 is the year you're going to read it. Or just a book that's come out sometime. It doesn't even matter. A few books that I'll mention, just because, well, I can, is Plus 1 Year More. That is the novella that is related to, it's actually set before Any Good Thing, and that will hopefully, barring further complications, come out next month already, which is a little bit crazy, and I'm going to try to breathe as I say that. But that will be a novella, so that will actually be shorter, much shorter than Any Good Thing. So if you don't have a lot of time, novellas are a great way to go. Then in the fall, I will have a short story collection, also related to some of the characters from Any Good Thing. So once again, I think short stories and short story collections are a great way to read if you don't have a lot of time, because like novella is basically a shorter novel. It's not quite novel length. So mine right now is sitting around the 30,000 word mark, if that means anything to you. If you're reading like an epic fantasy, you're looking at 100 and something thousand words. Most novels are somewhere between 50 and 70,000. So this one's 30,000. So that just kind of gives you a little idea of the difference in size. And then if you have a short story collection, obviously you can read each short story, which is basically the size of a longer chapter, and you can read that in a sitting. And maybe it's days or weeks before you pick it up again, and then you have another story to read. So that's what I like that about short stories. I actually have a title, but I'm not going to tell you yet. You're going to have to wait. I also want to make sure that I really am committed to this title. I feel really, really good about it though. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with you guys. And then another thing that I know we have plans to work on and hopefully put out this year is an audiobook for Finders Keepers, a practical approach to find and keep your writing critique partner. So this will be a new medium of book. So I have a lot to learn and a lot to prepare to get ready to put this out. But we feel pretty confident that we can get this done this year. So those are just 3 books that I could mention to you guys that are coming out this year from me. And I'm looking forward to so many others. I mentioned Michelle Keener earlier. She is an author who has at least 1 book coming out this year. And oh, she just told the title of it. Now I can't remember, but it's related to Mission Hollywood. So if you have read that or you've seen me mention it, it's some of the characters in that, some of the secondary characters. This is that character's book. So it's kind of fun how you can read a story and then, you know, maybe you really liked a secondary character and then the author writes a new book that's focused specifically on that character. It's pretty cool. I like that. I have a friend of mine who is writing some books like that, and it's exciting to hear her as she's writing the first book. She's like, oh, I have all these ideas and now I know how this book's going to be for these characters. And so it's a lot of fun to kind of see that process. So I think that that's pretty much everything. But at any point, if you guys want to put in the comments below, whether you're watching now or later, you can ask for recommendations for books if you're looking for something to read, or if you have a book that you really like and you want to share with us, please do that. And also, I want to know what your reading goals are. I want to know what books you're looking forward to. So drop that in the comments and we will chat later. You guys have a great night, and I hope you have a great rest of January. Bye.